Welcome to the Measure Q Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for Wednesday, November 7th, 2018. Please stand and join in saying the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll move on to roll call. Tad Smith, I am chairing this meeting. I am here. Gary Riddle.
I'm here.
Jack Caldwell is absent. Andrea Kett.
Here.
Julie Mustard.
Here.
Georgette Portier.
Here.
Robert Strong is absent. I will make a motion to adopt our current agenda.
Sorry.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll move on to review of the minutes from our last meeting on September 26th.
Should I make a motion to accept?
Any comments from the committee?
Nope.
All right, I'll take a motion to accept the minutes as written.
I move to accept the minutes as written.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, passed unanimously. I have nothing on the consent calendar. So if the committee will indulge me, I would like to jump a little bit ahead to new business and invite Superintendent Dolan to come up and maybe discuss some of the changes that have taken place since our last meeting.
Great. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to provide you with a little bit of information and then perhaps answer some questions that you might have. As Tad said, Brian Dolan, Superintendent of Schools. And first off, I want to thank you for serving in this role. Time, energy, thankless, but I'll say thank you tonight. I also want to thank Melissa Mercado for taking that lead chair over there this evening. Melissa, for those who may be watching at home, our Chief Business Official, and ably filling in here. So as you are well aware, at this point in time, Mr. Calise has moved on to the Berkeley Unified School District for an executive director position there in facilities. His last day was on Friday, and over the 5 or 6 weeks that we've had since John informed me of his departure, been spending a whole lot of time on transition planning and finding some support for us, especially in these next few critical months as we get into plans coming out of DSA and CDE, pre-qualification documents being published and dealt with, bidding documents being developed, and then actually going through that whole bid process. So that's really what's ahead of us in the next little while. So when John's departure was announced, just to be clear, the governing board said, Brian, your top priority right now is to address our transition here and to become more involved in some of the activities around Measure Q. So that is what I have been up to along with Melissa. We do have a governing board facilities subcommittee of 2 board members, and we met with them a number of times as well as we've explored our different options as how to get through this transition period. So where we are today, and then I'll kind of back up, is after many conversations with different possibilities, we've identified a consulting firm who we want to contract with for services here to get us through this first chunk of time at a minimum. The long term, how long we will go with this remains to be seen a little bit. So the name of the firm is School Site Services. They're based in Sacramento. They are just around the corner from our architect firm, LPA, so we have some convenient kind of logistical things about contact. The president of the firm is a gentleman, John Dominguez. Company's been in business for 18, 19 years. Came with many real positive references from a number of school districts, both large and small, actually up and down the state. So as I explored the many different possible resources for us to engage here, one thing about school site services that was different than many of the others was essentially that they can give us kind of A to Z services. So some options were only what I'm calling boots on the ground kind of project management, people who could be on the site working with contractors and architects in the actual implementation of the programs. And remember, we're not just talking about the middle school. We've also got the fire life safety at Sylvieville. We've got the fencing at Gretchen. And we're in early stages on some of that safety at Tremont with regards to retaining wall and their office reconfiguration, right? So we're not by any means just focused in on the high school. We also have some non-Q projects. We're going to be putting in a well over at Dixon High School that's going to get us off city irrigation, city water, save us a ton of money. We also have the school farm to develop, again, not a Measure Q project. So our facilities needs exceed the things that have been under the Measure Q umbrella and your purview. So to get back to it, the thing about school site services ultimately that led me to recommend that we advance with them, and I hope to have a contract before the board next week, is that they are a full-stop shop. So they can provide the project management, they can provide the coordination with the architect, they can provide the interaction with California Department of Education, Division of State Architect, familiar working, extensive experience working with inspectors of record. They are able to provide everything that we need, whereas some folks could do this part but not the rest of the part, or this part. And I was really concerned about the prospect of having people supporting us who weren't under the same roof and had systems for communication and coordination and those elements. So as we talked with various folks, this became clear as our best option. And we've had, as I suggest, a number of meetings with them already, and are in a position where because they're nice folks and are interested in supporting us, giving me some support already before our contract is done. And then once our contract is completed, they will be performing in a scope that we're still working out, quite honestly. I don't believe that we're going to need support and service every day at this point of our project. We are waiting on, as I say, DSA. Architect goes and meets with DSA on November 19th. They expect to have stamped plans returned to us by November 26th. We are in the California Department of Education review process as well. Received a letter from them yesterday that we'll need to respond to in the next couple of days, a couple minor questions that they had. And once we have those approvals, then we get in, we submit our form into the Office of Public School Construction, OPSC, to pursue the modernization funding. And so all of that remains on track. All of our timelines about going out to bid, January, early February at the latest. Start the project at the middle school in April after the bid process is complete. All those timelines remain intact. We have not had any hiccups in terms of falling behind or not having any issues there. Mr. Felice continues to support us. Had him in my office today looking at some blueprints over one of these questions that came from CDE. And he has pledged to continue to support us as we move on forward. What I can't give you right now is how much our consultants are going to cost. I haven't been able to give that to the board yet. Part of that is some of the negotiation we have going on right now. And part of that is still defining the scope of work that we're going to ask them to engage in. Obviously, the amount of time that we're going to use them is a question as well. Don't know exactly how long that is going to be at this point in time, but when we come to agreement on a contract, it will include the opportunity for us to end our services with them or their services with us with an appropriate amount of notice. With regards to replacing John, the director position, we are beginning the process of looking at that position itself, reviewing the job description, and determining if it is an appropriate job description for what we need at this point in time, if salary schedule is appropriate. And one of the things we know from talking to really everybody I spoke to about possibly helping us said, you have a pretty shallow pool of potential replacements out there right now. And some of that is driven by geography. Some of that is driven by things like title or place in an organizational structure. A lot of that is driven by salary. And we may be competitive, we may not. That's actually data that we're collecting right now and putting into a format that we can use to kind of do what, comp and comparability, where we look at number of days being worked, looked at duties, look at the compensation package, including the benefit piece, and see how we compete with others. We actually are undertaking the same process for all of our management positions. This one, however, is the highest priority. Might we decide to post and pursue our own person to take over these duties in the relatively near future? We might, yeah. But I can also say that we might not do that in the short term, that we might make some decisions about getting the projects further along and transitioning at a different time. We're entering the holiday periods is typically a non-recruiting time. It's just tough. I mean, you can't get interviewing done, those types of things. So in essence, we do have some time to work as a management team, and then any work we need to do with the board too about consideration of how we actually want to tackle management of our projects on the long-term basis. I remind you, if you hadn't heard this before, we had begun the process of considering some additional management support. We put out an RFQ for construction management firms. We'd had 4 firms respond to us on that. We had one of those withdraw. When John announced his departure, we actually made a determination to postpone interviews that we actually had scheduled with those firms at that point in time. One of the issues of those firms is, and the RFQ went out for an absolute full-service model, which was going to be extremely expensive if we pursued it. Extremely expensive, and would have blown the soft cost budget absolutely to smithereens. And due to a little bit of the technical nature of the RFQ, we couldn't ask those folks to come on in and say, what would you charge us for partial services? The RFQ went out for kind of the whole show, and so technically we couldn't ask them to come on in and give us a more limited presentation, right? And talking with some of those parties after the fact, and some of the other consultants with whom I spoke about how to proceed, the advice there was those large CM firms wouldn't want partial work. That they like to have the big projects where it's bigger money for them. And typically if a firm would decide to work with you on a more limited basis, you're not going to get their top people. Top people are going to go and work on the $300 million project. They're not going to go and do a relatively short-term contract on a $15 million project is kind of what the feedback that we were provided along the way. So I need actually to have contract on the governing board's agenda for next Thursday. That's my intent right now. I've got some work to do with school site services tomorrow and Friday to be ready to do that. And certainly we can come back and, my board wants to know, what do these dollars look like? What types of costs are we talking about here? Obviously, it's critical to all of us. So we can cycle back with you and provide you that same kind of information as soon as that's available. So, rambled there, I think, through most of the things I needed to share with you, but I'm happy to entertain any questions that you have or take any comments.
Well, I guess the big question is, who's going to be our contact?
So, Melissa Mercado is our Chief
Okay.
Business Official, and I am going to essentially ride shotgun a little bit, be on call. The focus of your work is on the financials, and we probably, quite honestly, didn't have Melissa here enough through the first part of this process, right? And so having her here will, I think, help in terms of the flow of information back and forth on the financials. And you will find her probably to have a warmer and more engaging personality than either Mr. Calise or me. So you'll find Melissa, if you haven't spent any time working with her yet, to be a good partner and colleague with you as you go through this work. So there may be some things that we tag team. There may be some things like this particular item more appropriate for me to speak with you about than Melissa. But she's the numbers person, and this group is about the numbers, and so she'll be your lead and primary here. Yeah.
So I have a question, Andrea, and I met with John a few weeks ago and about the website, and it doesn't look like those changes were made.
Okay.
Do we go through Melissa?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and here's what'll happen, right? And I'm here tonight, and if it's your request that I be present for each one of these, we can make that happen, right? So that's, I'd be happy to do that. Some people would be concerned, well, are we trying to stack the deck, or, is he there to glare at people to make sure that they don't ask the wrong question or things of that nature. I'm happy to be here if that supports the work of the Oversight Committee and, make sure that we're maintaining all the communication that we need to have, and any kind of questions or concerns you have can be addressed on the spot, or at least can be noted and say, okay, I've got that too. But what Melissa and I will be doing, we already meet very regularly, but we'll now begin an additional regular meeting or add to our agenda the CBOC, and so that is a good example, Melissa, of something we actually were speaking about earlier today, about the whole website issue, and understanding that hasn't been resolved to the level that it should be, or implemented to the level that it should be. So we were talking about the individual from Cooperative Strategies with whom we need to speak about addressing those things, and between us, we will be making sure that those kinds of things get followed up on.
So I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that was, at the last meeting, I think that was some confusion what level the district did versus what Cooperative Strategies did, but then the contract had ended with Cooperative Strategies,
Okay.
and so if you can just get back to us kind
We
of
certainly will, yeah.
after, I'm sure John left you notes on where we left off.
We
Yes,
spent
I'll
a
get
lot
back
of
to you on that.
time.
I'll follow up with Ben and make sure we get those things resolved and,
Okay.
and send you a follow-up email.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the only thing that I just want to make sure that we have continuity is that, if we can ask the district, whether it's Supervisor Dolan or Ms. Melissa, to, provide us updates, monthly updates, our typical CBOC meetings, just provide us updates in terms of the project schedule, the budget, if you're soliciting for services or construction contracts or whatnot, whatever the case may be. I would hope that this time around that the district would be open about actually providing the info rather than us asking for it, you know what I mean? Like, if you're already soliciting, just let us know.
Absolutely. I
and-
definitely want to have a transparent relationship and provide you all the information that you need to do your jobs.
Truly
Yeah,
appreciate it.
and if it hasn't been generated yet, what I would ask, I think, of the committee is, let's develop a list of the standard requests that you have, right? The routine, regular things that you would perhaps like to see, whether you're meeting every month or some longer period of time. Some of those things can be emailed out to you and posted on the website at the same time. Some of those could, some of them perhaps can wait, right? One of the things that I have had conversation with consultants about is making sure that they're supporting us in our work with you folks. They have a lot of experience in doing that across the state, so that's a natural part of the services that we'll be getting. There may be times where we want to bring one or more of members of the firm in here to be part of answering questions or making presentations. They know that, part of the service, well aware of it, happy to do it. So that's the dialogue that we can continue to have. You know, you make your requests and ask your questions. You know, and let me say this, and I hope you'll hear it in the spirit that it is intended, and that is, well, obviously things are different now, right? I'm not a construction person. Melissa is not a construction person. John was a construction person. So our ability to answer questions on the spot or provide details about some of the elements of projects is certainly going to be significantly lower than John's was. Same time, you know, I had my board president came to see me on a matter today, and at the point she came to my office, I had excuse me, I had the blueprints out in front of me, looking at a floor plan in A wing because we got a letter from CD asking about a particular room, right? So I'm able to stumble around something like that to the level of, okay, I saw what the room they were asking about. John came up because he wanted to make sure, we had a phone call, and he said, I want to make sure that I'm a visual person, I got to see this. You know, we confirmed what I was thinking was, you know, on target, if not accurate. And so be patient with us, if you may, a little bit, as we do our best to provide some of the kind of answers that John was able to do like that, that we're not going to have at our fingertips. We remain committed to answering your questions, right? So, like I say, I don't want to be taken as, oh, we're off the hook because Khalees isn't here anymore. That's not, first off, the attitude or approach that the governing board believes that we should have with you. And it's not my or Melissa's approach either. We want to make sure that we are sharing everything that we can with you in as timely a manner as possible. And, you know, all cards on the table. There's been times where there's been some push and pull or tension or whatever you want to call it about you folks asking for this and whether or not that falls in the scope of the role. What I hope is that we can have constructive conversations around that and, you know, what are you looking for? How can we provide that? You know, the fact of the matter is, you know, we had a really competent and engaged person helping us. We're now going to rely on some consultants, especially here in the short term. We got some bugs to work out. I have no idea. I have no doubt, right? But the idea is that if this doesn't go well in this room every time you meet, that's not good for any of us, right? And it casts doubts about the projects, and it casts doubts about our intentions and all those elements that are not, no pun intended, constructive and will help us have successful projects completed. So we want to work with you. We're committed to working with you. Please keep the lines open with us, and we're going to do our very best to support you.
In your discussions with school site services, have they worked with C-Box before?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. To a great extent.
I figured that
Yes.
would probably be the case.
Yes.
So as you have your discussions with them, make sure you can identify a contact person on their end that would work with us.
Certainly. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do so.
So I'm just a little confused. Is school site services going to take over partial of, partly John's role?
Yes.
So does that mean the bond's not funding any of the fees for
So-
school site? How does that work?
So we're going to determine that. So all along, this is a soft cost expenditure, clearly, right? And all along, we've had the idea of consideration of construction management firm or project managers or such. You know, I think our intent all along was to minimize any kind of expenditures there because we did have John and because John had a very broad knowledge base and skill set and all those elements. And so we have had the possibility of some outside help, right? So now we clearly need some outside help. I needed this less than 2 years ago when our previous CBO left, and it took the time to recruit and hire Melissa. So we had a business consulting firm in the district. 3 years previous, we had the same thing happen when the previous CBO left. There are some positions in which you're going to have to bring in some support services while you're doing this. What we will be able to, my hope for next week with the board is to say, for a year, here's what Mr. Calise was going to cost us. Here's what we're looking at as the approximate costs of school site services for a year's worth of service. And so that we're able to be totally open about, Calise would have cost us $10. School site services is going to cost us $13. We see that there's a difference of $3 for the services we're going to have, and that those are, really clear to people, and it's not some sort of game where we're trying to hide the cost of of this consultant. You will see exactly what we're spending in the reports that you're given, and we will make sure that your questions about the services they're providing specifically are also answered, right? So is this going to cost us more money than we would have spent if John had stayed here? Probably so, yeah. That's the anticipation. Expenses around project management or construction management or the consulting around the OPSC or CDE or DSA things, they are appropriate bond expenditure, although it's our interest for all sorts of reasons, all of them positive ones, that we minimize our soft costs to the greatest degree possible.
Yes, so where we wouldn't have seen any of John's salary, or we haven't yet, on Fund 21, we're going to probably see some.
Services that replace John's salary, yes, right.
They'll be
absolutely right.
coded, so we will see salary
Yes.
expenses
And
in
that's a
that
decision
sense.
the board will also entertain, right? So they may say, okay, so John's funded out of base dollars, general fund dollars now. They may say we want the equivalent amount to go to school site services before we touch any bond dollars, right? So it's not an automatic, we're going to say, hey, everything we spend on school site services is going to come out of the bond. It could be to say, let's spend up to this dollar amount, might match John's expense, might be a portion of it, might exceed it even, right? That's a kind of decision that the board gets to make, and again, we'll be totally clear with them when they make that, and in reporting back to you folks what the composition of that expenditure is.
Well, that's good for the, Measure Q money, but then it's going to cost the district
Of
quite
course,
a
right.
lot if you have to hire another facility manager.
Right, right. And obviously the transition, never a great time. It never would have been a good time for this situation to happen. We're actually in a little bit of a lull period right now where, we're waiting for plans to get stamped and approved and get back out. We are doing the work on the pre-qualification documents, some early work on the bid documents as well. So those processes are continuing as we're waiting for approvals to come out, and in this period before hammers start swinging and paintbrushes start rolling, those types of things. So while this is challenging for us, it would be a whole lot more challenging if this were in July, right? And we had walls ripped open and everything else going on over there. So I'm confident in Melissa to do her share here. And I really am confident and comfortable with consultants that we've identified. And like I say, had 2 members of the board there for discussion with them as well. And they support us working out an agreement with this particular firm to provide the support.
And so your school site services will be helping us with the PM services, I'm assuming, but also CM then? I mean, are you guys open to?
Some elements of, right? So, and when we look at our whole list of things to do, let's pick one example. So a Q project is the fencing at Gretchen Higgins, right? So the board approved the contract with Crusader Fencing to complete that project in December here of 2018, right? So we know we've got the internal capacity, and there is an inspector of record there as well. So we know we've got the internal capacity to make sure that that thing is done without needing somebody from school site services to sit on that site every day and watch every minute of work and those types of things, right? So where we can say, no, we got this, we're going to say we got this. Where there are situations where clearly we need help, we use an attorney to do the pre-qualification documents in developing them. We need the support of somebody who knows what they're doing in terms of evaluating those documents and making sure that the folks who are submitting them are meeting the standards and those types of things. It's not going to be the attorney. That's going to be somebody who, not necessarily a project management task, but certainly a CM task, construction management task of, if you're talking about a full-service CM, part of that is dealing with those kind of technical elements of the paperwork approvals and all those kinds of things. So again, the nice thing about school site services is in one shop, they can do all the different components, and we have the opportunity to kind of pick and choose a little bit about what we're going to use them for. So I don't know if that addressed your question, Georgia.
Well, I mean, you had mentioned that you had an RFQ for CM and you may be postponing interviews, so are you just gonna not do the actual CM requests, or?
Here's the, so the initial CM RFQs were the whole show, right? Those were coming in at about $1 million. Obviously, no way. Obviously, no way. And then the feedback we got as we were talking with a number of consultants and advisors was, if you try to get a full-blown CM firm to come in and do just a piece of it, just the compliance, contract, bidding, all the legal docs, you're going to, probably 3 things are possible. 1, you'll get no responses. 2, you'll get really costly responses, because now they don't get to have a project that costs this big, so it's a smaller project, and we'll make up some of our losses, for lack of a better concept here, by increasing those costs. Or, what was the third thing? I got myself distracted using my hands. I apologize. But the idea was that we were discouraged from pursuing full-blown CM contracts now, just that people didn't feel we'd be successful. I actually feel we've got a better chance of managing our costs here with the approach we're taking. The other thing is, a CM firm would want to say, we're on that job from beginning to end. With the approach we're taking, we'll have some flexibility to say when we're going to end those services. So if a guy moved into town and wandered into my office and said, hey, I'm a construction management guy, and heard you have a bond, how's that all going, and here's my resume, and I've got 25 years of experience, and da-da-da-da-da, say, wow, let's talk about what our position, what our job description holds, if this is a match, if we want to post and pursue, right? Kind of a fanciful example there for you. But if a better long-term solution becomes evident to us, having the flexibility to engage in that better long-term solution and not have, you're not absolutely boxed in with a whole CM contract for the whole project, we like that flexibility. And frankly, school site services is a less expensive option. Even if we went with them for the whole CM project, they're a less expensive option than some of the big firms.
So, sorry, one last question.
That's why we're here.
I hope.
That's why we're here.
School site services, so since we're gonna be using them for Measure Q, was there like a solicitation RFQ some sort, or?
No, essentially what I did was started beating the bushes and, talked to a couple of our consultants who are working with us in other elements, talking to architects, essentially talking to my superintendent colleagues in the area, and generating a list of potentials for us to support. Like I say, we engaged a couple board members in this process of conversation and review, not only helping with the selection, but also helping with the, actually being in some of the transition meetings. We're going through project lists and talking about timelines and those types of things. One of the challenges of doing an RFQ right now would be time, right? So that's part of the dynamic, is that going out and doing a full-blown RFQ would take us, I'm not sure exactly how much time, but it would extend out what we're trying to do here. So the board instead is entertaining the agreement through a contract for these services and being able to get going full speed with them as soon as possible.
Has the district had any past experience working directly with school site services?
No. I have, however, spoken to a number of people, both in education and outside, who have, And I've received real positive feedback on a good firm to work with. One of the gentlemen who's most likely to assist us here, especially on the project management side, he was actually the facilities director in Woodland for a number of years. So he is known in the area. He's known by architect that we worked on with the high school and is doing the farm project for us as well. One of the people in school site services is the relatively recently retired director of facilities in Vacaville. Really outstanding reputation, a ton of experience. So when we look at who's working for school site services, it's a good roster of people. Most of them retirees, not exclusively, but a good roster of people with a lot of experience in school facilities. They talk about the other consultants that we have quite favorably, and the other consultants talk about them quite favorably as well. So.
Is this project in place now? I mean, this contract?
No. I anticipate being able to bring it to the board next Thursday, as long as the next couple days go well.
So I looked online, it's School Site Solutions.
Solutions, I'm sorry.
I was looking for
Yeah, thank you.
SSS.
I don't know if I said that the first time. There's School Services of California, right, which are financial advisory and advocacy, so.
I
that's
do
not
want
the-
to make sure that is the
That's
name
not,
of the
yes,
company.
School Site Solutions, yes. Not the first time I think I've made that mistake, so thank you, Georgette, for
That's
for
okay, I
catching
just want to
that.
make sure.
No, you are correct.
Any further questions?
I think I'm going to have further, but I rather just kind of think it through first and
Sure.
then perhaps send an email.
Absolutely, yeah.
So maybe understand your purchasing policy,
Mm-hmm.
because just like with the county, we can't just hire somebody without competitive bidding or whatnot. However, we have different venues, we have sole sourcing if it's needed, emergency type stuff. So I think let me kind of
Okay,
soak it in and
Certainly.
understand, and then I'll probably send, some more questions.
absolutely.
I have one comment, and I don't want to get into a big discussion tonight on it, but I would suggest that yourself and Melissa would look at page 10 of our draft report under availability of contract information.
Okay.
And that is really the key of one of our issues on our role and responsibilities. And I think if we could get that issue resolved, it would go a long way with our working relations.
Okay, we'll make sure we circle back and take a look at that. I've read the report quickly at this point in time, but I'll circle back to page 10 on the availability of contract info.
Right?
Okay?
Okay, seeing
All right.
no more questions, thank you so much
No.
for spending your Wednesday evening with us.
That's
We
okay. What
really
better,
appreciate-
good folks to spend it with and engaged in service to the district and our kids. So I will be here the rest of the evening. Happy to pipe in if there's something else that you need a hand with. Chat afterwards if you need as well. And then, again, Melissa and I will be working out here how we proceed with this. And if it is your preference that I'm here each time out, I won't be sitting up there. I'll sit down over there and can join in as you need. So,
Okay,
thanks
thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, back on track now. Move.
Oh.
Okay. Public comment.
Since you moved that, the new business agenda.
Well, just that one part.
Yeah, but I think you take items as are
Yes.
discussed, so, and I think it's fair to update this committee and the citizens that are watching at home of what we, the taxpayers, have been doing. And then I have a couple of questions that I look on the agenda to see if I could ask them in some other item, but I couldn't find, so I'm going to ask my questions after I finish my update. As the committee knows, and there were numerous articles in the newspapers, the Solano County Taxpayers Association launched a website, MeasureQOversight.com. And I'm very pleased to say we have a lot of traffic. I keep in track of the traffic, so I was kind of disappointed. I thought nobody cares, but as I look and there is traffic, I think people do care and they, visit the website. I try to upload documents as fast as I get them. For example, when I got the agenda in the packet for this meeting from Rose, immediately went up on our website, so your unadopted minutes gonna be adopted tonight when I go home, because I post them as unadopted, and now I'm gonna change them to adopted. Now, my two questions are, first of all, when I was uploading the audit planning memo that the auditors addressed to you and to the board on April 5th, 2018, and you did not ever receive that memo, it stated that the year-end audit fieldwork was scheduled to finish in October and that the exit conference will happen thereafter. And they also said that probably the audit was going to be ready sometime in December. I want to make sure that you guys receive the audit at the same time as the school board and not 2 months later like it was last year, because the law, that's what the law requires. So I asked Todd to put that on the agenda for discussion, but when I asked him to do it, the agenda was already out. So I want to make sure that you follow the guidelines, and that audit planning memo is posted on our website, so you can go and visit it. Now, my other question is, and maybe I'm a little bit too picky, and you are lucky that Gary sits up there and not me, because in your minutes that you just adopted, it says, under legal fees, Chairperson Smith stated they simply do not have the documentation from the district to discuss if anything was charged to the bond for legal opinion on various letters that they have written to the district. And my question would have been, if I was sitting up there, have you received those documentation? Do you know what legal fees, if any of the legal fees were paid out of the Measure Q bond, or we just discussing things, we put them in the minutes, and then out of sight, out of mind. So that's my two comments.
So ahead.
Yeah, we will address that tonight. Thank you. Any other public comment? Any public comment for Superintendent Dolan? Okay. Moving on to our second public review of the draft report from the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee that will serve as our annual report to the citizens of Dixon. So if there are any general comments from the public at this time, I'd be happy to take them. Okay. So starting from the letter from the vice chair, that is what I wrote. I took the feedback from the public, their meeting in September, and submitted some changes, and various committee members submitted changes as well. And Georgette had the task of trying to summarize it and put it together in a nice form, and then I took a second pass at it, and that's what you see in front of you now. Any comments on that? Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on then. Oh, you,
Just a second, let me read this last paragraph, because looking for that part about
The tax,
we were pleased to report or about the expenditures. That was in your letter. It's still in a report somewhere,
I
maybe
have
it's,
the old one, you want to see the, from last month?
oh, I have it too. Somewhere here, my,
Yeah, in my section, I did not write any, clear conclusion. I just stated that we have a good understanding of how our taxpayer funds have been spent.
yeah, the last one, okay, I see what was there, so
Yep.
that's no longer. Well, you have said, we good understand how type funds have been used, and this is reflected in the following report. Okay, all right.
Can you live with that, Gary?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So we have one page on the roles and activities, and that also included some background information. Based on public comment, we did insert a paragraph, pertaining to how the Measure Q tax assessment is being reported on tax statements to homeowners in Solano County. And we also covered the fact that the Measure Q bond cost to homeowners is more expensive than was initially anticipated due to the higher interest rate environment that we are experiencing.
Okay. That's my concern. That next to last paragraph where we say a higher premium than expected of $971,554 due to an increased interest rate. And that just doesn't, premiums are normally paid by investors when the bond coupon rate, the interest rate, is higher than the market rate on the day they're issued. So this is, you would have increased interest rates would create a discount because the people are getting more than the bond interest market. So that's, I've revised that. And since we have our CPA expert down here, maybe she can.
Premiums and bonds were never my thing.
It's,
That I can say.
it's in the Accounting One book.
Yeah, no, that
I
was-
checked it to make
yeah.
sure. I says, I can't believe what I'm reading. Anyway,
I always get it backwards,
I think we should say
always.
just simply, where it starts talking about the premium, and a premium of the $971,000 resulting from bond interest rate, the bond rate of interest being greater than the prevailing market rate of interest. And then that would which is exactly, I'm sure, what happened. Now, one company bought all those bonds, and this is, let me just digress. This is the reason that I suggested some time ago, and we never did get to it, and I'm not, there were other things. Right at the very beginning, we should have had somebody, our treasurer, our county treasurer, which is sending out our tax assessments. He's been in the investment. He was the investor for the county before he became the treasurer. He was the assistant that did all the investing and has a very good knowledge. And, we should have had a good knowledge of how this bond works, just for, we are the Bond Oversight Committee. It'd be interesting, I mean, it'd be good if we could, when asked questions by the public and things, that, we have the basic understanding of how our taxes and everything get assessed. And the bonds, basic bond information. Anyway, on the second, the last paragraph, we talk about the last sentence on that page 4, said of additional concern to the CBOC, but outside of our task. I don't know if we need to put that in there, but is that estimated cost of major Q bonds was $36.75 per 100,000, and the actual cost was $49.81, and we say due to higher than expected interest rates. Well, that could very well be so. I don't know when the estimate of the $36.75 was made, but the tax statement basically said we would be within that amount through the entire bond, the bond payments. So I don't know why interest rates changing from there until, we issued the bond would make that much difference. I mean, I don't know how anybody could project out that far to begin with. And we don't know, again, we don't have privy to that documentation. I mean, how that estimate was made. So you could speculate that that was the total problem, that the interest rates went up. And
They had to pay a higher interest rate. May have been the investors weren't willing to purchase the bonds at a lower interest rate. They demanded a higher interest rate for them to be purchased.
that's a good rationale, but we don't know that. Or maybe it was just a bad estimate. Maybe somebody used the wrong numbers. In 2016, the market rate for bonds for both 2016 and 17 opened at $2.44. The high during 2016 was $2.60, and the high during 2017 was $2.63%. And the closing, there was about a 30% disparity. They had a closing in 2016 of 1.84%, and in 2017, 2.33%. Now, bond rates, the bond changes every day. So without, I don't think we can make these kind of statements unless we can actually support it. And we haven't seen anything to support it, and we're speculating, and that may be the total answer, but I would rather not make a statement in
And you
here.
could just drop that last part due to the higher expected interest rates, just leave it off. Because I think the numbers there are correct.
The numbers are correct. I have a wording here, and I was saying revise and say, of additional concern to the CBOC is that the estimated cost of the Measure Q bonds was $36.75 per $100,000 of assessed value, but the actual cost is $49.81. 36% increase. And we can add in there, the current actual cost maybe. And that again, probably will fluctuate during the term of the bond, depending on how much, these estimates might have been made also on the real estate, the value of real estate increasing over the years, and that's a real wag to try to estimate over the next 25, 30, 40 years exactly what the value of the real estate is. So I think we can just say is currently 4981.
Take out the last part.
I mean, you'd have to have a crystal ball to get the correct number there. So that's on page 4. That's,
Melissa, you know anything about those bond issuing?
Well, it's interesting. I'm not incredibly comfortable with all of those either, but we did have Ben Delinka from Cooperative Strategies present at our board meeting a few weeks ago in regards to the bridge financing, and he had mentioned that the current rate is 35.53. So I'm not really quite sure where the 49.81 came from. So I would like to contact Mr. Lomelli and get some more information from him and just be comfortable with that number myself, because I've heard a different number in just 2 weeks prior. That was
Okay.
less than the 36.75. So this is an item that I need to do some research on my own just to feel comfortable with it.
okay, let me just state this, Melissa. We've already confirmed this with the auditor controller of the county, she's responsible for the money being there, and the rate is 49.81 on the current tax assessment. And the thing that caught my eye on this is when I got my tax bill, they combined this with the Measure J refinancing, which sort of disguises what happened. So we have the documentation, the letter from the county auditor controller. And it is currently, for this next year, is 49.81 cents per 100,000 value for Measure Q.
Well, bring that, and we can put that in the back of the report as an addendum. That would be helpful.
Okay.
And Melissa will stay in contact and get this
Absolutely.
straightened out. Okay? Any public comment on this section?
Let me see. Page 4, we're still on, it's not page 4. So, well, we can always skip back when we get down further if I see where this is. I should have gone to the district and got my copy of this and had it all highlighted, but I was working off my computer screen, and naturally I couldn't bring it down here with me.
Okay. Ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right. Next section was the CBOC roles and activities. We discussed a little bit about Proposition 39, the background for it, our mission statement, the duties of this committee, and really didn't make any changes from the previous version there. We moved on to the purpose of Measure Q, and then talked about the roles of the various CBOC members, and we have a nice table of their roles. This was obviously for the first year of the committee, where I was serving as vice chair. Following that, we go into the discussion about the fact that the committee was not established within the 60-day time limit after the election. This committee did not convene until June 28th, almost 6 months, or more than 6 months after the election, and we've had a lot of discussion on this issue. Again, the committee has rewritten this paragraph and captured most of the, or all of the information that I have available.
I voiced my opinion on this paragraph relating to superintendent's apology to the board, and I suggested last time that we take it out. I
Well,
see it's still
I
here.
left it in here simply because that's actually what happened. It's up to the citizens of Dixon to decide, you know, if they're willing to accept Superintendent Dolan's apology or not, but that did happen. I'm a little uncomfortable, you know, trying to determine the validity of an apology.
Well, I don't even know if this is appropriate to put in our report. You know, we've already been criticized by the board for going outside our scope and putting things into, they didn't even want to put the violations of the ed codes into the audit report, and said it was also out of our scope to address it. So if we're not going to address the laws, I don't know why we're going to address, to me, this, you know, I think if superintendent wants to apologize to the community, he can do that. But I don't know if we should put it in our report. And I'll let others.
I'm fine with it being in there.
I'm fine with it. It tells a story. I mean, you know, we're just being factual,
Yeah.
so,
Well,
but
I guess you got the same email I did from one of our citizens.
Yes, and I responded.
what was the email about?
The email, it was addressed to Tad. It says, "It has been brought to my attention that the annual report for the public fails to apply changes to the that the committee discussed at the earlier meeting. For example, I have been told the report will discuss the failure of the district to appoint the committee in the time prescribed by government code. It is unacceptable to excuse that failure based on a mere apology by the district superintendent of schools. The report should make clear that the legal requirement was not met. No excuses."
I'm happy to put in a statement in there that the legal requirement was not met. It's pretty obvious, but if that wording is requested, wonderful, put it in. Yes, please.
In the beginning, I heard a lot of comments when this program was starting, and there was no agreeability as to what between the superintendent and the group, the oversight group. Therefore, myself, I also, that an apology by Mr. Dolan is not acceptable due to his legal responsibility to the oversight committee and to its Dixon taxpayers. So I wouldn't put his apology as, could have been an accident or anything. No, he's supposed to know. The committee was trying to help him too. But he was kind of disregarding some of that and wanted to rule the committee his way. Is my impression that I received at those, back then.
We discussed at the last meeting also that it was difficult to get a committee seated, that there weren't people just beating down the doors to be a part of the committee. So that took a little bit of time too.
Yeah, I was the last person that joined in late May, and after that happened, they convened the committee.
Like all the people that come to the
Superintendent
meetings.
Dolan, is that the case that we were severely delayed simply because there was no public participation or willing people to join this committee?
So, let me be clear for the record. I failed to establish the committee on time, and that did not comply with the Education Code provisions. Period. Full stop. My responsibility. Accept it. The going board dealt with me with regard to that, as they should have. And at the time we began the process, we publicized in every way we could, reaching out to individuals from the various groups, and it took a long time to get to 7 members, right? Initial failure, then challenges in filling the seats. So I don't know if that's clear enough for you on the process, but
Did you accept everyone that applied?
we had to.
So you weren't waiting for a select
Never.
people to show up. You took who came.
Never.
And and I was the last person.
Right, and we actually moved some, if I recall correctly, we moved some people around in roles, right? So we had to have someone active in a senior organization. I remember that as one particular challenge. And so, I don't think I'm creating this in my head. There was some discussion about somebody potentially joining AARP to be able to qualify as a member of a senior organization, right? So we did beat the bushes and attempt to fill the committee after an initial failure to meet the 60-day requirement.
Thank you. So I think we very clearly state what Superintendent Dolan just stated, that, this was in violation of the Ed Code, and put that in, and I think the rest is accurately reflected with what happened.
Agreed.
Well, as I said before, I'll be happy to leave the whole discussion out because I could write a page, and I'm sure others could add to it, of a circumstance, and I don't think we want to do that. But if you want to leave it in the report, I'm sure you're going to get some comments back.
Okay. Yes, please.
I have a ton of emails exchanged between myself and Mr. Dolan. The first one was sent to Mr. Dolan in January of 2017, and telling Mr. Dolan that we selected who's going to be representing the taxpayers on the CBAC committee, and that he had 60 days to apply, to put the committee together. Mr. Dolan replied that the school board was going to accept that elections results that at their January 12, I think it was 2017 meeting, and so they had the day 60 days thereafter. I have other emails back later in March stating that he had advertised in the newspaper, and he was going to close the application process in the school, and he was going to have a special meeting of the school board to appoint the committee. That was back in March of 2017. Nothing happened. I don't know why it was put, in the back burner. In the meantime, contracts were made, almost $20 million in bonds were sold, and the committee was not in place. I'm planning to put all those emails on our website. I'm open, transparency is very important. I'll be glad to share it with you. You can add it to your report, whatever you want to do. Mr. Dolan is here. He knows that we communicated back and forth, and he knows I'm not making things up.
Thank you.
I just want to I need to understand what it is, Gary, that we're trying to accomplish for this paragraph, right? We're trying to say, we're just trying to say that, yes, the district did fail to establish the committee. Took the responsibility, and by the way, they didn't really have it, there wasn't a lot of people applying for it. What is it that, what are we trying to communicate to the citizen of Dixon besides what we had said here? So basically, you don't agree with, including the sentence about the apology? Is that what it is?
I don't think we need it in the report, and I don't think that, that's up to the superintendent or the district, whoever wants to address that, why they didn't do it. I don't think it's our responsibility to put that in the report. It doesn't belong in our report.
Which part?
The sentence that starts with after the CBOC was established, basically the apology.
Right. That's the other part of stating when we were formed and everything. That's factual information, and that's what we should be putting in the report. If we start getting into, this happened, but this is because of this, and this is because of the, this thing, like I said, you could write a page on this, and I don't see where that is really pertinent to what we're just reporting information here.
Well, like the last sentence says, which we just discussed too, that there weren't enough volunteers.
I think the paragraph
Well-
accurately describes in a succinct and clear manner what happened, and I would just let it go to the citizens to decide what to do with that information. I'm not writing a page on this.
Like I said earlier, I'm fine with the way that it is.
I say we move on?
Yep.
Okay. We then talked about the subcommittees. I don't recall any changes there. The website committee was, or that information pertaining to the website was rewritten. I was overly optimistic in my first draft, and based on public feedback and what actually did happen, I have corrected it to kind of reflect more of the issues that we're currently having.
Okay, see, where are we in the contracts now?
We're on page 9 under
Oh,
website
still
committee.
under 9, okay.
Yeah, we don't really have anything else to report until we hear back when the changes will be made. For this report, though, that's accurate.
Okay. Yes. Barely.
Try it again? Is that
No,
working?
come on up.
I just wanted to point out that as of yesterday, your February 28, 2018 meeting and beyond, before that, they're all deleted from the Dixon.
I have that on my list of topics
Yeah,
to be
it's
discussed.
not
but
deleted,
this
the
is-
links
this
are
has to-
broken.
Yeah, the
Well,
links are
I don't
broken.
know, they are on our website. We have backups, all the way back to June, but I got some emails from people and said what happened, and I'm not a website expert. I know now how to upload documents on the website, but
But for purposes of this report, that's something new that just happened. So for this, yeah.
Okay, can we move on then? So we'll move on to activities, and then we go into contract information. And I think, Georgette, you rewrote part of this on the contract.
Right, remember, we had the portion of issues of concern or something like that towards the end of the report, we wanted to bring it forward. So we captured most of that and rewrote it or relocated those items under activities, that's all. And there were some comments made during last meeting, and I just watched the videos and just added what,
The, one little clerical thing here on that, the third sentence from the last on page 10.
Yep.
Subcommittee will continue to request,
Okay.
and
where are we at? I'm so sorry.
the third from the last line on page 10,
Third from
the third from the last,
uh-huh.
says the committee will continue.
Continue.
Continues.
And will needs to be added, is what I'm saying.
Right here, I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Continue request for
You see where it says the committee continue? On that third sentence from the bottom.
Committee continues to request.
Subcommittee.
The subcommittee continues or will continue.
Just
Oh, okay.
to
Will,
request.
will,
Oh, okay.
will
I'm
continue.
trying to find the committee only, okay.
And
Okay, sorry.
Not to be picky,
Yep.
but if you're going to do something, I would use the word shall.
shall,
Or
Shall.
continues.
That's
or
more
continues.
emphatic.
Didn't we talk about?
That you're going to. You literally are going to, not will.
now you're getting legal on us here, and you know,
Subcommittee continues to request access to the solicitation.
that's a legal definition.
Subcontinue.
Shall
Continues to
means
request
definitely
access.
will.
And you have
The
to shall,
submissions.
will, nothing.
Okay, continues, next. Come on.
Okay. Also, is there any, the paragraph before, I would like to suggest that we expand where it says a subcommittee will, gosh, wait a minute. Oh, okay. The subcommittee will continue same sentence, I'm sorry, will continue to request access to the solicitation documents, which you have, comma, contracts, comma, selection documents, and the subcommittee to attend the selection process meetings. Which I'm just adding one item in there and adding to the series of, we're right here, same sentence we were
Yep.
talking about,
Okay.
I got it.
All right, good.
unless you disagree with that.
Or have time for. It's fine,
Well,
it's
all right.
fine.
Page 11, anything on that?
okay, no, I don't think I had any more.
Nope.
Okay, moving on to page 12, I think there was a typo or an inversion on the numbers, and we got that corrected here
Typo on the what?
from the previous draft. I think the 1 million, 3 million was wrong previously, and you corrected that?
No, It stays, it's just the first issuance. The question was the project for those, but, you know, for the Gretchen Higgins, it wasn't the right amount. This is just the first issuance, that's what it
okay.
was. How they broke it down.
So now that we're moving into the money part, Georgette, were there any changes on page 13?
The only changes I made was under cost, third bullet, I think I had incorrect fiscal year. So I just put in the 16, 17, 17, 18. And then there was just minor clerical. Other than that, let me see. What else?
Does that take us through the bottom of page 14?
Yeah, sure. Let me tell you guys what the changes were. So that's it in terms of the cost. I'm moving on to page 15. In terms of schedule, I've added June 2017 when the CBOC was formed and for the timeline. That's about it. And then I move on to the results of financial and performance audits. So.
For people in the audience, by adjusting this timeline, it captures the things that took place before the committee was formed, so it's very clear.
Georgette, on the items you have highlighted,
Which part? Where are we at?
page 13, start out talking the $15 million bond, 15 million, and then the next one, expenditures through need to be reviewed. That's just a comment to put in there, and hopefully everybody has reviewed those, I guess.
I think that's why Miss Melissa's here. I bolded that just because it's something that I think we as a committee need to understand how to read that expenditures report. Remember, I had questions in terms of,
So you put that in that for us to do some additional work tonight, right?
additional,
Well,
no,
I mean-
it's more of, no, what it is I wanted to make sure that it's captured, that we need to still review it, because remember, I've
Right.
mentioned before that the contracts that were brought up to the board didn't match the encumbrances or expenditures report, and so I just wasn't sure how to read that, and so that's why I bolded that to make sure that it still needs to, at least somebody needs to explain it first.
In other
You know,
words,
and
we need to address these bolded items tonight, and then
Yes.
they won't be in the report.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
yes, you're correct. And I think that was it, so I don't know if anybody had any questions under project scope, cost, and schedule and contracts. The next item that I made changes on based on our meeting was under the results of financial and performance audits. I think I just deleted one sentence at the last paragraph.
What page is that?
Page 21.
Um,
It was the second sentence. Previously, I had put in there a sentence, something along, in order to make the changes above, it would cost the district a large sum of money. We just
Cut
crossed
that
that
out,
out. Yeah,
yep.
it wasn't necessary. And then there was just minor clerical changes under page 22. We don't like forced labor, apparently. And that's it.
Going back to page 21, where we took out we're saying there was no interest by the CBOC and formally asked the district to spend time and taxpayer resources that would be required to reissue and refile a new financial performance audit. Actually, we did. I was asked to go there to the board meeting and address this issue, so I guess there was some interest. Again, I think it's one of those things, you can get into a discussion of what, and that was quite a lengthy discussion. They even called the auditor back to retract his statement that he made right here in this meeting about if he had known about the Ed Code violations, he would have put them in the report, and he didn't know about them. And then he went to the meeting and he said, no, they shouldn't have belonged in the report. But there was a long meeting and a handout of documents, very thick, So there was a lot of work went into that. So there was some interest on our part to go there, and there was a lot of interest on the part of the board, I guess, to dispute what I had presented to them. Anyway, I don't, I'm just saying, I don't agree that we didn't have it. It looks on the surface like, well, we reported something, but we weren't interested in doing anything about it, and I don't think that was the case.
I agree with you, Gary. So
Thank
we
you.
need to augment this, but at the end of the day, we did agree that we were not going to ask the district to spend time and resources to refile those financial and performance audit. Although we did spend a lot of time on it, we did make a presentation to the board, which you gave one of the most clear, succinct presentations that was very understandable, and it was much appreciated by the members of this committee. You did a lot of work. So somehow we need to expand that paragraph to capture that investment of time and effort, particularly the time and effort that you put in. So we will address that.
Who will address it, just so I know? I'm gonna get the
No,
comments.
Gary and I will work out and fix that paragraph.
Okay,
Yeah, I think we can, to kind of capture exactly what
Yep,
what happened in as few sentences as possible.
yep. Okay. Then we did capture some information for the cost-saving projects that John Cleese was involved in. We didn't go into a lot of detail, but we did want to capture it in this report, and that pretty well wraps it up.
I am adding another attachment, though, the letter from the auditor controller.
Okay?
That will be, Gary, do you have that letter? I have my own letter, but I wasn't sure if I should use that letter.
Yes, please.
There is separation between Gary and I. What he does on the committee, it's his business and part of the committee. And what I do as a secretary of the Solano County Taxpayers Association and an involved citizen is different. So that email between myself, Chuck Lamelli, and Simona Padilla Solchens is on my computer, and I'll be glad to forward it to you guys.
Thank you.
So am I using that letter then? I have one too from the auditor. I'm not sure how, if it's expanded like hers, so I don't know much information.
I think the one that you got should be used. The one that you received as CBOC member should be probably. the one-
But I didn't ask as a CBOC member. I asked as a citizen.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why. So Gary, am I gonna get it from you then? The letter? I will send it to you. Okay.
It's on- I have a copy, but it's on her computer, because she got the correspondence.
Okay. All right. No more, okay?
It's good.
No more.
Well, not necessarily no more, because there's the big part that I want to review. It's
Okay.
the encumbrances.
Right.
Expenditures.
Right.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So, any more public comment on our report? What we intend to do is take the public feedback that we got from tonight's discussion, make the changes, have the committee review it, and we're pretty close to issuing it.
What? No, hopefully, I need to understand the expenditures piece.
And that will
Because I
be,
think there might be hold on, there might be a language there, besides the two bullets that I can remove, but I mean, yeah, so if you look at page 14, I'm sorry, page 13, starts from page 13. Page 13, under contract/encumbrances, we've got some numbers that are not matching, and so that's what I want Ms. Melissa to explain first, whether we keep it like that, or maybe explain it a different way or what, I mean, you know, so there might be some changes there
So-
for each of the projects.
I'm ready to move on to that part. Melissa, you ready?
Yes, I actually uploaded 1819, and I realized later that you wanted 1718, so I brought a hard copy of that
Okay.
to hand out.
Yeah, it looks like, yeah, it's, boy, that's thicker than what I have. Wonder-
Did you do dual side?
Maybe I got two copies. Oh, no, what's it, one of 10 pages.
It's a summary of all the ones that we've got,
This says it's
so we can get rid of all those.
6 pages.
So this is an accounting detailed transaction report that comes directly from our accounting software. This might not be as easy to read, and I'm happy to do this in a different way in an Excel format, but I'm not sure if you would prefer it coming directly out of the accounting software, or I could do it in Excel and provide the accounting software report as well to support the amounts to make it easier, but I'll go ahead and give my best go at explaining this to you. So this report starts with the adopted budget. The adopted budget, well, first of all, it gives a description, and then the adopted budget. The adopted budget is our budget as of July 1st of the year. Our revised budget happens twice a year. It happens at our first interim and then again at our second interim. So we change those as needed, but it can happen anytime throughout the year. So if we realize one line item needs more money, we can make an adjustment throughout the year. An encumbrance means that we have entered into a PO or entered into an agreement with someone, and the money has not been spent yet, but it is going to be spent. The next column would be the actual expenditures, so that means a warrant was actually cut and the vendor received funds. And then the balance column simply takes the budget minus the expenses. So that's how this report works. Beginning, there are small little explanations at the top of each line, so you can kind of see that it says clerical salary at the top. So this is her normal salary line, and that's the $12,265.27. And the reason there's so many lines is because every time the payroll hits, it takes an expenditure, so that happens throughout the year. The next lines start with her retirement, or the retirement for that employee. That would be the next section, which is $1,860.99. The next section is Medi-Cal, or, actually, it's short, Social Security, I'm sorry,
Oh, real quick, this is 20%
of her salary.
of her salary.
So the total for that year ended up being, so with her benefits and her salary and statutory deductions, the total is $15,625.12 for that year, which is 20% of her salary.
I'm sorry, say the numbers again.
The total with salary and benefits for 17-18 is $15,625.12.
And I'm just curious, I tried to look up the salary online, because I was trying to add it up, and I'm trying to see what a 20%, it was a little difficult. Maybe you can send me a link?
I can get you the salary schedule, and so
Yeah.
it'll give you the range of where she is between step 1 and step 5, so.
As long as it's
Yes,
somewhat.
I can absolutely get that to
Okay,
you.
all right.
So that continues all the way through the top of page 5. So the last of her benefits ends at that $214.58. So all of those lines were different statutory deductions that go to different vendors and places and whatnot. Once we get into the next line, this is our outside services line, and this is where some of our meat is happening. So in here, we actually had coded some of the contracts in the wrong place. So LPA really shouldn't be in 5,800, which is outside services. Really, it should be in capital outlay, which is a 6,000. So I'll just jump to a number really, let me see, where is it? I'll get to where I take it out. At the end, on page 9 at the top, you're gonna see an expenditure of a negative 947,880.22. And that number reappears as a positive on the next page under the, capital outlay, because it was appropriate to go in there so we can capitalize the project. So, but I'll go back to page 5 and continue. So on page 5, we do see that we have our DSA charges. We have some charges for cooperative strategies, who has helped us with our bond management. The encumbrance column, I do and don't, I mean, you can look at it for what is going to be paid, but really the expenditure column is where everything's happening. And it is chronological in order. We also have some lawyer fees, that's the Atkinson Andelson, and then cooperative strategies again, and then some more with our architectural firm LPA, who is doing the middle school project. And if we go to page 6, there's more LPA. We can see Atkinson again, Aurora Environmental, who helps us with some analytical testing. We have cooperative strategies, LPA again for $25,000. We have Atkinson again, Aurora Environmental, cooperative strategies, some more payments to them. Another payment for $787 to cooperative strategies. We have Atkinson, and then we have some big payouts to the architect. We have Atkinson again, cooperative strategies, and then we have our architect again. Going into page 7, we have some more money that we did for the analytical testing with Aurora. Cooperative strategies, we have our architect, and then cooperative strategies. Architectural Nexus is our other architect that we're using for the Gretchen fencing project. Cal Inc., they help us with asbestos and lead removal, so that's what that is for. And then we have LPA, who's helped us with the modernization as well as the re-roofing. We have Filippi Engineering, which was the survey for the easement.
Slow down, you've lost me now. What
Oh, I'm
page are
sorry.
you on?
At the very bottom, I do.
Bottom
Up
of
7?
The very last one of page 7.
Okay.
So we go into the next page.
Right.
I'm only going through the actual
Yep.
numbers in the expenditure column. So we have Architectural Nexus for our GH project. Then we have LPA for the architectural services. And then we had a big check that went to the Department of, to DSA for the roofing project. And we have Architectural Nexus again, and these are just listed because we make progress payments, and again, that's happening chronologically, so this is, some of these are part of one PO or one order, but we're just making the payments in a chronological order, so that's why they're listed multiple times for different amounts. We have Cal Inc. for the lead remediation, we have cooperative strategies, we have some LPA for our architect. 1920 is when is that? No, we're not at RUA yet. That's also Architectural Nexus. And then we have 3 LPAs. And then we go to the next page, and that's where I took the 947. So really, that's only leaving the things that are not capitalized in that 5,800 line. So I moved everything else to the capitalization line. The next little section right here is the demolition of the portables at the middle school project through Cal Inc., and that's that section. And then we continue on to DUDEC, and that's where we did our traffic study, and that's what we use them for. And then RUA, it has been the contractor that's been doing our roofing project, and so that's where they get introduced to their first payment. And then we have another payment to DUDEC. Country Bear, they actually removed the electrical for the portables at the middle school, and then Optima was the inspector for that project, for the removal. If we go to page 10, we do see that 947 is increasing in our capital outlay, and that's what we want to do. And then our next section is split out to recognize a different location, and this is the playground at Sylvieville, which was the $148,000. So our expenses for the whole year of 17-18 are 1.4 million, just over 1.4 million.
Okay, so your 81,000 that was left in local professionals is who? Is that cooperative strategies mainly?
Where are we?
The 81,000 that you have left in
Oh, in account
other
balance?
local professional? So after you've journal entered out everything that has to do with building. So on page 9, you took out the $900,000, and you're left with 81,000. So what you're leaving in other local and professional expenses is basically the cooperative strategies?
And Atkinson,
Okay, so it's those two, okay.
yes.
So, the question that I really, that I was struggling, I'm struggling between the numbers that, the contracts that were presented to the board for approval versus the encumbrance. So like, for example, I really can't capture the LPA, because I don't know if there was more prior, like in 16, 17, you know what I mean? So this could be like a rollover of the encumbrance from 16, 17 or whatnot, I can't tell yet. But for example, like RUA is brand new, okay? That was, their first contract was in 17, 18. But the contract that I saw, I mean, I tried to go back through the school board meetings just to see what contracts went through specifically for the bond. But the only one that I saw was like for 559. And I did see that here. However, like on page 8 towards like more than halfway, the first RUA line item I see is for 148. So I wasn't sure what that encumbrance was for. And then I do see the RUA on the next page for the full contract amount of 559. So it didn't match to me, and I wasn't sure, maybe I missed a contract, another contract prior to that one, or what?
No, the RUA, I did have that one pulled
She
up
took
earlier.
it back out.
It comes back out, the 148.
It's right here, she took it out.
Yeah.
So here's going in, and here she took it out.
So why did it go in and why did it come out? Because just, this is really hard to read, just trying to follow the
It's
flow.
fund accounting.
These are kind of difficult to follow. The encumbrances are hard, and part of these are part of the year-end entry closing. So when when all of it hasn't been paid, okay, so what happened on this one is some of these services incurred in 17, 18, but not all of them were paid in 17, 18. We weren't billed until 18, 19. So we have to accept the expense in 17, 18 because that's when the services actually took place, but yet we're not paying it to the next year. So some of this is reflecting that.
So like, for example, the 148 would be the payment for 17, 18 only?
So the payment for 148 is saying this needs to be spent in this year, and then it gets spent in that year when it comes back out,
Okay,
but in the new year.
so how about this?
Okay.
I'm gonna ask this. Perhaps provide CBOC just a project budget, a summary. All I'm asking is construction costs. I understand the bond, there wasn't a true estimate for every line item. I mean, you know, when I request for projects, I have to spell out how we created the conceptual estimate, what we're asking for, what line items, what soft costs. So to help the contract subcommittee do our part of review, because this was a little difficult. I had to just kind of add it up, try to figure it out. Perhaps provide us just a project budget. I don't want a summary. I want an actual project budget that says construction costs, this is what we're estimating. I mean, the total should be the 30 mil bond or whatnot. You can say, you know, you can have a first column for the first issuance, you know, another column perhaps for the future or whatever. But in any case, I just want to see how much money you have in the budget and what you're actually spending money against. So like if you're having construction contracts already in place, that's fine. I just need to see how much it's for and how much you've already expended. That's all.
I'm happy to do that. I wasn't sure what you were comfortable with. I brought this to be more transparent since it's a system-generated report, but
Yeah.
I would love to do this in Excel.
Oh, no, I still do want to
Oh,
see this
yes.
at the end. The bottom number should match your project budget, right?
Absolutely.
And so that way it's just a lot easier, and rather than me trying to figure out how the money was spent.
That's actually no extra work for me. I have that already at my office, so.
Because I think from the standpoint of the numbers on this sheet, the two that are the biggest for us is the budget, what makes up that budget number, like on page 8, there's the $918,000. It's kind of like, well, what makes up the $918,000? I mean, budget-wise. And then the expenditures. I mean, that's the crux of it. Yeah, and we have to just ignore the encumbered column.
I can absolutely prove
Oh, I
that.
still need the encumbrance.
Yeah, no, no,
Be-
no.
I
but
mean, that's the
but
contract.
Looking at,
Oh.
yeah. But if we know the breakdown of what that budget number is, then that helps us to.
So perhaps what, I don't know if the committee is okay with it. I'm gonna leave the blurb I put in where the, what did I say? The encumbrance doesn't match the expenditures or something like that, or contracts doesn't match the encumbrance and expenditures report. I'm gonna leave that. However, I'm gonna add a statement there that in the next report, perhaps, because it's a little too late for me to try to remove it and make sure I review it, right?
Well, you might want to put an explanation as to why, and you mentioned, something happened in one year and the money came out in the next fiscal year. Things like that were one of Melissa's explanations, so you don't want to leave an assumption out there that maybe something was wrong.
Misused or something.
Right, because, well, hold on, let me reread what I wrote. It's been a while.
Not add up to contracts presented for approval by the board.
So like, for example, under, let's just do the soft cost, page 13. I said there's like 1 million contracts presented to the board for 16-17 and 17-18. But on the encumbrance and expenditures report, I saw like 1.4 in encumbrance. And that may be incorrect just because of how it's already explained to us. That it was encumbered in the wrong budget line item, and some of it's not really expended for that entire year, only. So, Ms. Melissa, do you mind can you generate this project budget report for 16-17, 17-18?
Absolutely.
And that it will reflect the 16-17 and the 17-18 expenditures that we already have. I think we have 16-17 already. So I just want to make sure those two numbers will match to what you're going to provide. And I may just let this go. I may just remove it, because if I've already mentioned what contracts are I've already been in place, right? And as long as we agree that the contract is what's encumbered, nothing more, nothing less, but then we're fine.
Would it also help you if I provided the POs that support the contracts? Actually for that amount, so that you can tie it to the report easier?
That's fine as a
There's not that
backup.
many right now. I mean, I think that we currently have 16, so it'd be pretty easy to print out those POs for you, just
Yeah.
so that you can see where it's following the trail.
Okay.
If I can throw in one piece, so not all the expenditures are actually based on contracts either.
I totally
Right?
understand that.
So I just
That's-
wanted to put that out there, right? So,
Yes.
we have a service agreement with Atkinson Anderson for all of our legals, right? So we're not
The
going to see.
admin fee.
Yes, so
and
we're
all
not
the
going
other-
to, we're not going to see that under a contract. We're dealing with an hourly rate there for work done, blah, 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 all those kinds of things that probably don't add up to that 400,000, but are part of explaining perhaps why. So when we do adopt that budget, so for legal, Melissa, do we have an encumbrance with a legal budget? Or does that, just as a little bit of example, so do we have that as an encumbrance, or is it just that revenue is put in the budget?
We put a budget, but we don't have a PO that encumbers
There you
the
go.
total amount.
Right, it's just an
So it's a
expense,
budget
it's an
line,
expense.
yes.
Yes,
If you
that's
do.
all it is.
Yes.
I understand, yeah.
Another piece I'll just mention real quickly, based on conversation we did have with School Site Solutions the other day. And I wasn't aware of this whatsoever. I don't know that Melissa was either. Some software that actually breaks this down into more understandable, trackable, where at least one version of it, Escape talks to the software. So you could have your raw materials of the Escape reports, but also in a more user-friendly format that allows you to track real. So we're actually going to take a look at one of those vendors, I think, next
Tomorrow.
week. Is it tomorrow?
It's tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
thank
another
you.
example is for DSA, for example, we don't have a contract with DSA, and that was a big almost $160,000. So there are things in there, but I do feel confident that it is accurate. It might just be difficult to read. because we are
Yeah, no,
definitely
that's
validating
fine.
the contracts when the POs are going through.
I've seen how project budgets works, and you can just put on the budget line item the actual expense you put in. I mean, that's fine with me. I just need something to see, you know, an expense against the budget, right? I mean, that's all I just want to make sure the contracts that we awarded is actually what we're issuing POs for.
Yes,
That's all.
that's easier to give to you than the question you had just previously, because our budget, we're only gonna put in the budget in 1 year what we think we're gonna spend that year. So like this project is going 3 to 4, 3 years, so the entire 15 million that we have right now is not going to be in here currently as budgeted. That will happen as we incur those expenses. So some of that budget will be reflected next year, because we're not going to purchase furniture right now, so that part of it is not part of this report. So I can absolutely get you the construction budget, and I think it'll be very helpful. And then I think the POs tying to the contracts will be really easy to see that we are booking exactly what we've signed and agreed to.
Okay, so, Tad, with that said, I'm gonna need to wait to see that report in order for me to justify what I wanna say on the report. And then I'll share it with everybody, right?
So generally, we meet about once every 5 weeks. Is 5 weeks enough?
Well, we're not meeting Thanksgiving timeframe, so
That'll be
it's
first-
gonna have to be
Yeah, so it'd
sometime
be-
early December.
Yeah, it'd be early December, because we're already, first week of November, so 5 weeks out, second week of December.
Right, and I hope that, for our next report, I hope we've already captured, I mean, this is our second go-around with the
Yep.
public.
Yep.
I hope the next report is actually gonna be the final, that, captures
Yeah.
our comments tonight.
Yep, that's
I'm
it.
just waiting for, a summary, or project budget, I don't wanna say summary, project budget, just so I can justify what I wanna say as part of the numbers, and I hope that Gary would agree, he can make changes or whatnot, but, I just want everybody to actually be proactive and provide comments so that, because I'm assuming the next report going out is the final
Yep.
for our first report. Because we actually need to work on our next one,
Yep.
right?
So we don't have to do all-nighters anymore.
I have a question on, in your column where you have your POs. REQ, is that,
That's a requisition.
okay, that's what I thought. So in other words, what point do you put a requisition in? Is this like a commitment? And
Yes.
okay, I'm familiar with the term commitment, obligation, expenditure, but that's a different terminology, but but when you get a contract, that PO number that's assigned for that particular contract will remain constant throughout, correct?
Yes.
Until it's fully expended or closed?
Yes.
Okay.
So it could even carry into the next year.
Oh, yeah, so if we have a question on a particular contract, then we would just have to go to that PO, ask for that document to look at.
That's what I'm gonna provide. I would like to provide the POs, because that'll make it really clear and easy to see. And then it'll align perfectly with this report, and it'll be clear, very clear.
So just to tap on to what Gary was saying, so like for FY 18-19, page 3, like the LPA line item, is that the rollover of their encumbrance? Is that like the remaining
1 second, I'm sorry.
amount for
Say
contract?
that again?
Like for FY 18-19, page 3, under LPA, the 126K, my question was, is that the rollover from the remaining encumbrance amount?
Yeah, go back
On
to,
page 3? Okay,
Page-
so, yeah, it is, actually, and the
Is
easy
that how
way to
it-
see that is if you see that all of our PO numbers start with the fiscal year. So it says PO 18,
Uh-huh.
and then the next ones say 19. So that is a perfect example of how that is carrying over to the new year.
The 3,400, so it was in 17-18, but you're reflecting 18-19, you're carrying it forward?
Are we talking about the 126,000?
Yes,
Yes,
That's the number.
so 126,000 is still left to be paid in the new year.
Correct. Okay.
Yes.
For LPA.
Yes.
Go back to your 17-18 ending report on page 9, and you will see the last entry for LPA, that 126,739 encumbered minus. And that, so what, it says year-end closing in the description? They close it, and
And rolling it to the
Yes,
next year.
rolling it, that's the word we actually use.
so,
Rollovers, yes. I work with projects with budget. So I have a question in terms of contracts with the district. Do you guys actually present to the board when the project or the contract is complete? You present a notice of completion or something that reflects the true contract amount? Because sometimes we do have change orders. How does that work with the district?
Currently, we've been taking all of our contracts for Measure Q to the board. We even had one last week that was $2,000. But our policy is to take anything over 10,000, and if there were to be a change order that were 10,000 or greater, that would need to go back to the board as well. But our current practice is to take everything for Measure Q to the board, no matter the amount at this point.
Okay, but is there like a closing of a contract, reporting to the board? Like,
That's how I heard your question, Georgette, and no, there's no formal. One thing that does happen is that the monthly warrants appear on the consent calendar. So you know, an industrious person could go through those every month for however many years of, let's talk LPA, right, and all the time we're going to be with them, and add that up. But we actually don't have a formal process where a contract is approved, and then whether it's
Closed out, yeah.
whether it's a 1 month or whether it's a 3-year, where there's any kind of closeout report. No. I'm not sure. I'm not aware of any school districts doing that. Actually, I know not required under any of the accounting regs that we deal. Auditors aren't looking at that. It is an interesting idea, though.
well, I mean, the only thing to me is that as long as you inform the committee, if there's any change orders, any, in addition to the, the contract amounts, just inform us and let us know. I mean, just so we can keep track as well. And when you do provide the project budget, that should be the mechanism.
I think it wouldn't be a bad idea just to do this every meeting and just give you an update on whatever's transpired since we've met the previous time.
That would be really awesome. Yeah.
So we'll just make that a standing item on the agenda.
That would be perfect.
Okay.
I just have a general question. I know folks are interested in the website and, seeing all the minutes there and the financial reports there and everything in order. So when you give us, for each meeting, the monthly summary, so I got one from September, and this is for this month, November. How do I tell what the date is that you ran it?
It says at the very bottom, M. Mercado, November 7th, 2018. Well, I don't know if you're looking at the same one I am.
Right. So I-
48 p.m.
Okay, so I see when you ran it, but where do you
When I
put
ran
the?
it through, what the dates.
The range.
Detail
How do
for
you find the
dates.
date range
Oh.
for it?
The first line.
Top left, detail for dates?
Transaction.
No, that's for the whole year.
Oh,
I don't know. It's through the date that's on the bottom.
Okay, so through that date, but
It's-
what's the starting date? that you
Oh,
would-
July 1st of each fiscal year.
Okay, so it's always
It's
starts
always
at,
July 1st through June 30th.
Okay.
But it's going to be through the date of the report ran, but always starting on July 1st.
so always July 1st is the start date, and then the end date is the
Yes.
date you run it.
Yes.
Thank you.
but you could make it, you could condense it to just run it for the month of October or something like that.
Yes, if that's how you would prefer, instead of seeing the rolling total, if you just like the changes reported, I can absolutely bring that.
No, you've already
No.
posted a ton of it this way. I was just trying to understand the
Okay.
format you were
It's fine.
using. So it's fine, I just needed to
Okay.
understand that. Thank you.
So, Ms. Melissa, when do you think you can provide us the project budget? Let's just say, Tad, we're gonna meet early December, second week of December, I'm just throwing in a date. I still need to review what you're gonna give, and we have the holidays, and you also have holidays. I just wanna know roughly, am I gonna see it like end of next week?
If you, oh geez.
Because the following week's already Thanksgiving.
Give me through Thanksgiving so I could do it over the break, that would be great. Through the Thanksgiving weekend, is that
Okay.
too late?
So Tad, that means, I'm gonna need some time.
Well,
Well, I think if we can meet middle of December, not, not Christmas week, but, before that, to give us time to, for me to read what she's giving me, revise the report based on what I've seen, and Gary, you should see it as well. And then all of us should be able to just concur, so that way we can spit out the final report.
Is that too late?
Well,
It's fine. I mean, I understand you're putting this together for us, it's our first time, so it's totally fine. I just want to make sure that we have enough time for next, for our next meeting to
Well,
actually review it.
we don't have the next meeting scheduled. We'll have to check on room availability like we usually do,
Okay,
so.
okay.
Just a quick thought. So this new project budget we're talking about is a new thing, and I don't know that we have any kind of shared concept of what exactly that's going to look like.
I can gladly share what I use.
Yeah. So
And-
whether that's, you do that, or whether it would be in the interest to try to get together for a quick half-hour meeting where you actually bring that stuff in, because what I think it would be frustrating for you folks, and it would be really unfortunate for Melissa and her time as well, is if she goes away and she tries to generate something and then brings it to you, and it's like, oh, that's not what I was thinking of, or that's how I didn't
Right.
envision this, right? And so perhaps if we could create some dialogue, whether it's exchange docs through email or whether it's actually sitting down, I think it would be advantageous for us to be able to have that communication and make sure that we're actually preparing, well, not we, that Melissa, sorry, I'll correct myself.
I can gladly share what I use for my projects,
Okay,
Yeah.
that would be
mean,
great, because I just
yeah.
want to
So-
make sure I'm honoring your request.
Yeah,
and
if
making
that
sure
can
I'm
happen
getting you
within
right
the next week,
information.
perhaps Melissa might see, oh, this is it, I can do this in a shorter
so-
amount of time, or,
Melissa, how about this? I'll send it to you by early next week,
Okay,
okay?
that's great,
I
thank you,
have my
Georgia.
card too, I'll give it to you once we're done here.
The district software doesn't have options for you to generate reports of this nature, where you can...
No, we're actually speaking with with a company tomorrow that has a construction management software specifically to manage the projects. But our current software does not have that capability.
So you're talking about manual entries on everything.
Yes, but as Georgette mentioned, if I'm able to provide this in addition to the manual report, then you'll be able to tie and know that what I've input is accurate.
Well, I'm just thinking of the time it takes to, in this day, software, you should be,
No, but Melissa, you already said you are tracking this in Excel.
So it's
So-
just putting it in the format that you need.
oh, okay, so you can,
And I'm pretty quick in Excel. I'll be able to get through it.
yeah, you can just rearrange the, okay, good.
Okay, we ready to move on to the review of the recent financial statements?
Do you want to go through 1819?
The summary that you ran on November 2nd for us.
Okay, great.
Hold on, before we go there, though, do you mind if I ask for some solicitation documents? Because, I mean, I've seen contracts already got approved, but perhaps get information on this, I don't know how, but get information how the contracts were solicited. I know some were informal.
RFQs and
Some are-
RFPs?
Yes,
Yes, I
some
can
are
give
that
you-
way,
I can-
and,
I can give you information on how, I can provide that to you.
okay, so I'll send you an email. Of course, I'm sorry, the lines of communication is still TAD, right? I send it to you, you email.
Well, that was
I can't
John
just-
Kalisa's preference, so we'll have to find out what your preference is. If you want everything to funnel through me, or for the financial information, if you want to interact directly with Georgette, which I would prefer. There's no point making me an intermediary.
Okay,
I'm happy to work with Georgette directly.
Yes, please.
okay, for this piece only.
Yes, but
Okay.
I mean, I think there should be one central person in most situations,
Yep.
but I'm happy to work with you on this
For
directly.
this, okay, all right. Yeah, so I guess I'll email you, or I'll just send you a report and I'll highlight which contracts we don't have copies of the solicitations. We just knew they got approved, which is fine, but, we just need to review the bidding piece of it, so.
Okay. So for 1819, On page 1 of 4, so this is smaller, we're just getting going. There'll be quite a bit more next time. If you were paying attention to the last board meeting, we had quite a few things approved. But this first page starts just as the last one. We're starting with the salaries. So year-to-date, we have spent just over 5,000 on salaries, about 5,400 on salaries year-to-date. And then we get to page 3 where the salaries end, and we get into the, we're starting with some more with Architectural Nexus for the GH project, and then we start our LPA again, which is mostly for, it's still all for the high school. We haven't started, we haven't started the expenses for Sylvieville just yet on that. And then we have Atkinson, and then we go to the next section. Page 4 of 4, and Dudek, we have 2,200. We have another payment to RUA for the roofing project. Optima, who is the inspector, for the re-roofing. Then another payment to RUA, and then a payment to Dudek, and then a payment to Schneider. So I know that John spoke to you that we utilized all of our Prop 39 money for the electrical and the HVAC, and so this is the small amount that came out of Prop 21 that we were unable to fund from the almost 700,000 out of the Prop 39 money.
I think I have a document shows we were going to spend about 60,000, so we actually spent about double what we planned on that. Because John and I had a very lengthy exchange on Prop 39, and I kept saying, well, there will be money spent out of Measure Q. No, you don't understand. This is a grant. This is Prop 39, not the Prop 39 that was passed for Measure Q. But, in fact, I don't have it with me, but the estimate that he presented was about $60,000. I see we expended $118,000.
I'm not sure what John provided you. I'd have to take a look at that.
Well, it was a briefing he gave to the board. It was a financial briefing, and I pulled a copy of it. That's not important, estimates are estimates.
Miss Melissa, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to explain it again. I think you explained it to Gary, but what does requisition versus PO? What's the difference? Under reference column?
Really, the requisitions turn into a PO. So they're just a requisition for a short time until they're converted into a PO.
Ah, okay. So like the Optima, eventually there's a PO for 34.
You've committed the money, but you haven't obligated or encumbered.
Yeah. To us, we call it pooper. It's a PR. It's ready to be approved as a PO, but not yet.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going through
But-
the system, and then once it's actually printed, it's converted into a PO.
So
it goes
so
through
is
approval
there,
process.
so there isn't one yet for Optima? So for 3,400, is there do you see a PO?
Let me see. Optima. Now that's a requisition. I see a PO down below, PO 180855.
Right.
But that's a,
Let me see.
isn't that a
that's-
Rolo?
No,
Page
that's not the same
4.
one. That's a different PO.
Yeah.
No, that one hasn't been converted to a
Okay,
PO
so that's
yet.
what it means. Eventually, there will be a PO.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, understand now.
That just means it's going through the approval process, which we have a remote approval process, so it's electronic. It goes from one person's computer, they approve, and
It's been since July. How long does it take for you? Just kidding. Continue, go ahead.
so where was I?
So the expenses that you have in other local professional, are those going to have to be JE'd back out of there too? Because they have to do with the buildings?
Let me see what's in here. The LPA is going to need to be changed, yes,
Yeah, to the 64.
to the 6,400, and the architectural nexus. So yes, they will all go to,
So the only thing left in there right now is going to be the Atkinson Andelson?
yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So the total expenditures for this year to date are 572,000.
What's the bottom numbers, the 7.5 mil? What are those
7.5
for?
is the beginning dollar amount that John had provided to me to budget for this year. So he believes that we'll spend 7.5 during this year
Okay,
of the funds.
and we spent 1.4 last year, so, okay. So that's your budget for this year?
Yes,
Okay.
rough budget. It was pretty rough budget.
Okay.
Why do we have these other entries for Schneider, for the, the part of their work that was covered under contract? I'm
That's the
looking-
one she just said that, remember, they were trying to use Prop 39 to offset some of the HVAC electrical
Did
work or
offset,
what?
yeah.
Well,
Right.
majority,
Majority, yeah.
118, they couldn't, so that's the part where, because technically, the bond should have covered
Anyways, yeah.
it. But 118, Prop 39 couldn't cover the remaining 118, so that's why.
We expended the entire grant from Prop 39.
Yeah. How much was that, you said, the
It
total?
was about 700,000.
That's good.
I know, right?
Okay.
Do you have any further questions on this document?
Yeah, the public mentioned the fact that we may have incurred legal fees for that school board meeting on June 27th. We had the lawyer drive up from Fresno when Jerry was presenting on whether we wanted to ask this district to redo the financial report. So did that show up in this?
I would have to review that bill and see how it was allocated. I can't specifically remember how that bill was
I don't see it here
spread
on
out.
the report. It wasn't,
Well, we got professional services for Atkinson
3?
and Alderson
Oh,
for
yeah. oh,
$4,600.
okay, I'm sorry.
And I was just wondering if that was part of it, or if you know what that refers to.
I do know he helps us with all of our pre-qualification documents and a lot of the documents necessary to move forward. I'm not specifically sure what that exact charge was for.
But did you all bill him for legal services to compete against the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for that school board meeting?
I would have to look at the bill and be able to see how it was allocated.
Yeah, he would have just submitted an invoice. There's no PO. It's just,
'Cause that's going to get into a sticky wicket, because that's kind of outside, of how, Prop Q money can be spent, because that's not pertaining to construction or, support of construction. So, the public brought that up. I think at some point we got to look into that.
I'll come back with some information at the next meeting.
Okay.
When are the auditors finishing up?
The auditors are finishing up right now. We're going back and forth a few last outstanding items, but they should be done here shortly.
Do you have an exit interview set up or for the draft?
We don't really, I can schedule one. We don't really typically do one on Prop 21. It's a small audit, but I can schedule one if someone would like to attend, and I could have Jesse come down and do one.
well, they mentioned that they'll issue a draft. We would like to see the draft. I don't know if we need him to come down to address
I
it.
haven't received the draft yet, but I promise you, you will get the audit as soon as I receive it.
Okay.
Coming up.
Okay, I'm done.
I have a new item.
Okay.
I got a question. So I went to the school board meeting, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. I can't really remember. I've been to a couple of them. There was a mention of, we're kind of, John doesn't like to use the word shortfall, but technically, we don't have enough money to carry forward the entire Measure Q project. And so there was a talk about, using either some of the money for the later projects to, complete at least the middle school project, and then perhaps borrow some money to finish the later project, something like that?
So we do qualify with the state for some modernization dollars. We've submitted all of our documents, as Brian mentioned earlier. We did have some feedback from CDE that we need to answer a few questions. We're very hopeful that we'll be getting those funds. We'll be finding out in about January or so. So really, we're just trying to cover the cash flow issue that is needed to get us to when we receive those funds from the state. So there were a few options presented to the board, and the board, I think one of the options was to borrow against the future projects. One was to try to utilize some of our developer fees that we have now. One was our favorite three-letter word, the COP, which we're going to try to avoid doing. And then one was, those are all three of them. So those are options that are on the table to cover the shortfall, in the cash flow issue for that short time.
I didn't go to that meeting. What triggered the cash flow issue?
So, we currently we qualify for about $3 million in modernization dollars through the state, and that would be able to help us to complete this project. So we're anticipating that we'll get approved for that in January, but those funds will not come for a few years. So we're trying to just cover those few years that we're not going to have that cash to finish this project.
And again, when you say to complete the project, it's because of escalation cost, contingency that we don't have, right? There were other,
Never enough money to do.
right.
So I think a combination of factors with that, Georgette. Excuse me. So one, in some of the previous presentations with numbers, we actually didn't include a contingency figure in there.
Yep.
So that's about 1.5 million. So that's now included in that $3 million gap between the dollars that we believe we're going to have to spend. The other piece that has evolved certainly over time is, the cost estimating and what's the project actually going to run. With the value engineering and other efforts that architects and John have made, what we're talking about spending has come down, but we also, in terms, so one example, we're able to take about 800,000, give or take, off of potential expenditures, because in the small gym, multipurpose room complex, through this second round of engineering, they were able to determine that we could use existing ducting and not have to replace all the ducting, right?
Cool.
So that reduced the expenditure by that whole big bunch. So that gap previously had been 4.5, maybe 4 million without the contingency. So we've closed between what we're projecting to spend and the revenue that we have on hand for it. Without the modernization money, we'd be up the creek. Yeah, I mean, clearly. We'd be talking about having to either borrow or sell bonds earlier and then have not be able to maintain the same amount of dollars to do the Anderson project. With this, we are talking about some sort of shift. The unfortunate thing about the modernization money is right now, if typical schedule holds, it's going to be late 2021 or 2022 before those dollars come. Right. So that's why we're having the conversation about the prospect of bridge financing. And really, we won't get into more detail with that with the board until the point where we know we are in line in OPSC to get the modernization dollars.
In January, you'll find out?
That should be in January,
Okay.
yes. We should have our DSA stamps come November. We think could be late November or early part of December when we have the CDE approval. When we have the two of those, then we can go to OPSC. Soon as we get into OPSC and they still have modernization dollars available, projections are mid-year of 2019 when those dollars could be exhausted. So we're a good 6 months ahead of that anticipated point where there's no more revenue there. But if we get in there in January, we're just saying January, submit our forms, we have a great consultant who's doing that work for us, then we know that we're going to get those modernization dollars. then we address the short-term,
Bridge.
the bridge financing situation. Yeah. Okay?
I just have some information that may help Melissa with her research. I have an email from John Callis dated July 31st. Under public records request, he said that the attorney the school board requested the attorney to attend the June 27 bond oversight committee meeting, and since it was related to Measure Q, the money came out of the bond fund. So,
I can validate it as well, how the bill was charged. Thank you very much for your help.
Okay, any more comment on the financial statements? Okay, seeing none, moving on. I'll now take subcommittee reports, if there are any. We've pretty well covered it.
Thanks.
Everyone says we have covered that, so we will move on. Public comment from any other item not on the agenda? No. Unfinished business, the only item that we show there is Measure Q website, and we've pretty well discussed that already. New business, he let Superintendent Dolan already address the big item of concern there at the opening of the meeting. Is there any other new business items, Superintendent? Okay. For announcements, I will work with Melissa to get the next meeting scheduled, probably early in December.
Perfect.
And then maybe from there, we'll work backwards to
Yes.
provide timeline for
Yes.
everybody to review the report, finalize it, so
Yep,
that way.
hopefully it will go better, although I would like to publicly thank Georgette. She really put a lot of effort into
Yes, thank you. Very welcome.
getting inundated with all the committee's input, and she had to
Never volunteer.
format it, and, you know, the report looks really nice. So again, thank you for your hard work on that.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to bring up a new business, but I wanted to just confirm. John mentioned that he was thinking about doing a newsletter. I think
Oh,
I
there is
saw
a
one in the mail.
It's here.
It is
They
in
should
the-
have hit, yeah, hopefully,
Okay.
yes, those did go in, and.
That was
and-
great.
Yeah, so John did a great job on that, and what we were able to do, Keith Snyder in our technology office, he maintains our student database. He was actually able to print labels for us, so that went home in Spanish to families that home language is Spanish, and in English to families. We were able to just do one per family, and
But just,
so that.
just to parents and students. though.
Yes, so we do have additional copies that we're going to have available in our office. We'll put some in the public library, Chamber of Commerce, some of the places that do get some traffic.
Yeah, and get them online.
And that's the other piece, that we need to get them into a form and make them available, get a Facebook link
Shareable,
out
yeah.
there, all those types of things. So that's the next step.
Robert's not here tonight, but he had evidently posted some stuff in Dixon 411, so.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of his.
And this was going to be an
Savings.
ongoing concern, even though John's no longer in the
So,
district?
yeah, the goal we've established is to publish a newsletter like that
See
on a
everything.
quarterly basis.
Okay.
So,
Sense.
yeah,
It's
we're
a
going to
good
have to thumb wrestle or something like that to see who's going to put
Yep.
that together. It really was a nice job with
It was.
the pictures and everything else. And we actually hope to get to a point of being able to get some more video clips
Yes.
going as some of the projects move along a little further, so that people can see, you know, Christmas break, we'll have fencing going up at Gretchen Higgins, and getting that recorded and put out in some of these places we're talking about, is our website, your website, or Irenia's website, taxpayers' website. It's not hers alone. I apologize. and then being able to share the progress, I think would be good stuff. So, thank you, yes. I'm glad those got home. Bulk mail sometimes is a little iffy with how long they take. They aren't always able to prioritize it, but those just went to the post office yesterday, so glad they made it.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, folks? I think we're ready to call adjournment.